Okay, as Andy's kindly said, my name's Steve Hayward. I work for the Commercial Procurement Unit in Liverpool City Council. I have to say that the whole concept of underground refuse solutions was a brand new concept to me, and it's been quite interesting to learn what is out there. I mean, obviously, it is quite a virgin market in the UK with relatively few places using it currently. I find it quite interesting that sort of two of the three sites that I'm aware of, you've got Tower Hamlets, which is a very shall we say problematic or historically problematic urban area in the middle of Liverpool, in the middle of London, sorry. And then you've got two lovely cities like, you know, Edinburgh and Cambridge using it in very different ways. It just shows the flexibility of what we can do with underground refuse solutions. If we move on to the first slide, Mike, thank you. The main objectives of what I'm going to go through today are basically about what certainly were referred to as the OG regulations. I don't think we've come up with an equivalent term yet post-Brexit, so we'll just stick with that for the time being. I'm going to go through how a framework operates, the lot structure of the framework, how you guys can access the framework and actually buy stuff, and you know, the call-off procedures that are available to you. Next slide, please, Mike. Just a very quick overview. I'm sure that most of you are working in public sector organisations, so you're aware of the regulations and PCR 2015. They govern all public sector procurement. There is currently a threshold of about £190,000 that everything over that value has to go through what was called the OG procedure. The basics of that are that all tenders are given equal treatment, they're non-discriminatory, mutual recognition, proportionality, and that there's transparency. Basically, it's just so that procurement is seen to be fair, and actually is fair, not just seen to be fair. By using the framework, we've already done all of that work for you, and you can just simply engage with the suppliers without worrying about all of the OG regulations that go with it. As a point 4 there, as I just said, the framework is fully compliant and it's open to all public sector organisations. There is one slight caveat on that, as with all framework awards. If you are choosing the direct award route, then you must be able to justify best value. Next slide, please, Mike. How the framework operates. The framework agreement itself has a value cap of £200 million. That basically means that we can put up to £200 million worth of purchases through the framework before we need to start reviewing the arrangements with OG because that's the value that's the cap that we've set. The framework is free to access as a customer. There are no access charges, there are no administration fees or anything like that. It's just free to use. As has been touched on earlier, the lot structure is based on basically supplying the underground refuse systems themselves. Then there's the supply of the technology, vehicles, and servicing and maintenance that goes with it. In terms of the call-off contracts, there are 3 aspects of purchase that you could make at this point in time. There's actually the supply of goods and services, there's hire of vehicles, and then there's building works, which I'll touch on when we come to lot 1 in a moment. You can do direct awards through lot 1 and lot 2, and I'll go through that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And we can do further competitions through all 4 lots. It's important to note that some of you may have used frameworks before where there's been a ranking structure whereby you've had to award to the number 1 ranked supplier or the number 2 ranked supplier if the number 1 ranked supplier can't deliver the solution. There is no ranking on this framework at all. Any supplier that has been awarded onto the framework, you are free to use at your discretion in terms of following the process and, of course, always achieving best value. If we move on to the next slide, please, Mike. Thank you. So as you've just touched on, lot 1 is about the supply of the actual systems themselves. We are still in the process of signing off some of the contracts, so any supplier numbers are subject to contract. So lot 1, we have 8 suppliers on, and the value cap is 160 million. We see this as being the overwhelming meat of the framework. This is where the most money is expected to be spent, and we've got quite a lot of headroom there to utilise. The framework can be used, again, as has been touched on previously, to purchase fully underground systems, semi-underground systems, above ground systems, where they work in association with underground systems and the hydraulic platforms, which again we've seen some nice pictures of earlier today. If we're going to use a direct award procedure, then that must account for a significant portion of your requirements. So if you're buying sort of 50 bins or 100 bins and you want a bit of installation, then you can do a direct award based on the actual bins are the significant portion of your requirements. In terms of a direct award, certainly on lot 1 and lot 2, we've got fixed pricing from the suppliers for the products that they're offering. The suppliers are able to review those prices annually, so we expect the framework to remain current in terms of pricing for the full 4-year duration of the framework. The anticipation is that as this becomes more and more accessible to the UK market and it becomes more widespread, that we would hope to see prices fall over the 4 years, but that might just be me being a little bit optimistic. In terms to the actual URSs themselves, you can also then gain supplementary quotations for things like delivery, installation, and servicing and maintenance. The reason we've adopted that approach is because we felt that it would be unfair to tie the suppliers down to give us fixed costs for things that could be very, very different. For example, if you're bringing in a set of units from Europe, then delivery to Southampton down on the south coast is obviously very different to a delivery to Inverness up in the north of Scotland. So we didn't feel it's appropriate to actually tie suppliers to delivery. Likewise with installation, installing these bins on a brand new greenfield site might be quite simple, or they could be quite complex if you're in an urban environment or you have particularly difficult geological or underground scenarios to deal with. Likewise with servicing and maintenance, we felt that what customers might actually want from their servicing and maintenance contract might differ quite greatly. So by leaving it flexible and allowing customers to request a quotation, we have allowed customers to decide what they want themselves rather than telling them what they can have. That's certainly the intention of the framework, and hopefully that's the way it will work. The other option on lot 1 is you can go to a further competition process if you wish, and that would need to involve all suppliers on the lot. You can't cherry pick 2 or 3. You have to involve all 8 suppliers, and you would basically put out a detailed specification of what you want from the suppliers, and they would then provide quotations based on your requirements. Move on to the next slide, please, Mike. Lot 2 is the supply of technology. Excuse me. There are, again, subject to contract, there are 6 suppliers on this lot, and the value cap is £8 million. As we've seen from Andy's presentation earlier, you can buy all different types of technology. This isn't expected to be an extensive list, but it gives you a flavour of the sorts of things that technology can do for us. I actually find it quite interesting, as someone who's new to this whole concept, this idea that you can put a fill level sensor in a bin, and the bin will then actually call the council when it needs to be emptied and automatically put it on the next collection route, I think is quite a good thing to be able to do. Again, we have asked suppliers for prices on the products they supply, and direct award, again, must be based on a significant portion of your overall requirements. Again, pricing is fixed with an annual review on the anniversary of each anniversary of the framework, sorry. Again, Where products have not been quoted for as part of the fixed pricing, you can ask for supplementary quotations for what I've called here non-core products. So where the supplier hasn't given a fixed price for their product or their system, you can go and ask for a quotation. Further competition, again, has to involve all 6 suppliers on the lot and allows you as customers to specify exactly what you want. And then the suppliers have to come up with a solution that meets your requirements rather than it being the other way around. Next slide, please, Mike. Thank you. Lot 3 is about the supply of vehicles. And again, we have 6 suppliers subject to contract and a value cap of £28 million. There is no direct award available on lot 3. The reason for that is because of the huge variety of vehicles that are available. If you think just in terms of fuel types, you've got diesel, hydrogen, compressed gas, you've got electric vehicles coming online. You've got big vehicles, you've got small vehicles, you've got all the different types of lifting equipment that might be required. You've got vehicles that you might want a nice small vehicle that you can take around a public park or an urban environment, or you might want a really large vehicle that's going to collect, the waste from thousands of houses in one go. These vehicles obviously can also be customized in terms of the waste that they can collect, the types of chassis, types of body that you put on the chassis. And I think you get the gist there. It'd be very difficult to ask a supplier to provide a fixed price for a vehicle when there's so many different ways they can be put together. Again, it's further competition only on that basis, and all suppliers must be involved if you go to further competition. So again, you would specify what you want, and they would need to meet your requirements. We move on to the next slide, please, Mike. The final lot is lot 4, which is about the servicing and maintenance of underground refuse systems. Now, obviously, you can do this through lot 1 as well if you want the company that supplies your bins to service them and maintain them as well. Obviously, that is a sensible approach to take, but you may wish to go another way if you think that perhaps there are value savings to be made by going to another supplier. Again, there are 6 suppliers on this lot subject to contract, and the value cap is £4 million. Again, there is no direct award available on this lot, and you can only use further competition, which must involve all suppliers on the lot. Again, we felt that the actual requirements of servicing and maintenance could be quite customizable, and different customers might want different things. So this way, you can just put out a further competition, specify exactly what you want as a customer, and again, the suppliers then have to meet your requirements rather than you accepting just what they say they can provide. We move on to the next slide, please, Mike. Accessing the framework. Again, I'm sure most of you have used frameworks already, so you'll be quite familiar with the process. The framework has had all public sector bodies named. So as far as I'm aware, any public sector body can use the framework. That's local authorities, schools, academies, NHS trusts. I think even the Ministry of Defence, charitable organisations. It's there for for everybody. The first port of call when using the framework is probably going to be the APSE website. That's going to be the central hub of how we're going to market the framework, where the APSE website itself will probably host an overview of the framework itself, the user guide, and as we've touched on earlier, I think it was Marcus that mentioned it, suppliers are being invited to create their own micro websites within their own environments so that we can punch out from the APSE website to the supplier's content so you can see exactly what they have to offer. In a very straightforward and simple manner. Once you've decided that you're quite interested in perhaps taking this a little bit further, is you'd need to complete what's called a framework access agreement. I should point out that on the APSE website and on the supplier punch out, there will be no pricing. You will not be able to see the prices that the suppliers are charging. The reason for that, quite simply, is confidentiality. Once you've signed the framework access agreement, you agree to confidentiality, and you will then be provided with the prices, the fixed prices that the suppliers have provided, and other documentation that will assist you with the procurement exercise itself. Included within that documentation are the draft call-off contracts, which I mentioned earlier. They will be available for you to view, and they will there be then available for you to complete when you're dealing directly with the supplier. The only other thing that we ask from that point of view then is that you complete a customer order confirmation form. That basically tells us that you've actually followed up on your initial interest and that you're actually buying things. And we will ask you for some basic information about what you're buying, how much you're spending, what your time frame for installation and servicing and things like that are, just so that we can keep track of what business is actually going through the framework, because we, as the main contracting authority for the framework, we have to monitor the usage of the framework against the locked value caps that we've mentioned previously. If you move on to the next slide, please. As I say, we've got, well, I think I got, which ones did I forget off this list? I got police and emergency, I think I missed, and central government bodies, I think I missed as well. So that's just the list of the public sector bodies that can actually use the framework. Next slide, please, Mike. Obviously, I'm sure that some of you may have questions about how we're going to do this, about how this works, particularly if you haven't used frameworks previously. You can either direct questions to me through the chat function here now, or I'm available to be contacted offline if you'd prefer to send me a private message outside of this event itself. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. It is much appreciated. It's really good that you want to learn about what this exciting opportunity can bring for everybody, and hopefully we will all see benefits from it going forwards. Thanks all.